Welcome to Civitas LA, where we feature diverse and emerging leaders who make up this dynamic region and are creating community every day and building a better tomorrow. Each week, we hear from, learn from, and are inspired by a new generation of civic entrepreneurs who are forging a path forward in making Los Angeles a stronger, more resilient, and connected group of citizens. Within the last 2 decades, downtown Los Angeles has undergone an incredible revitalization. Since 1999, more than $25 billion, I believe, has been invested in this subregion of LA, consisting of merely 5.84 square miles. And starting with a very low residential base, downtown Los Angeles is projected to house 20% of LA's population by 2040 and 18% of the city's jobs. As a center of social, civic, cultural, and economic life, downtown Los Angeles will play an increasingly important role in the future of Los Angeles and this region. And certainly, no organization has played such a critical role in driving downtown's resurgence than the Central City Association of Los Angeles, and we're absolutely delighted to welcome CCA's president and CEO, Jessica Lall, on today's program as we discuss the revitalization of LA's urban core, where downtown was, where it is today, and downtown LA's future. Jessica, welcome to Civitas LA on this warm afternoon.
Hey, Dwayne, it is such a pleasure and really an honor to be a part of this amazing and much needed podcast. So thank you so much for having me.
Well, we're so glad that you're here. Let's start in with a few warm-up questions. We always like to share with our audience a little bit about your background and your journey, where you started and how you got to where you are now.
Definitely. Well, I've been extremely fortunate that the vast majority of my career has been working in economic development for downtown Los Angeles. Before I joined CCA in January of 2017, I served as executive director of the South Park Business Improvement District. And before that, I was senior policy director for downtown and Koreatown for Mayor Antonio Viragosa. So through these roles, I've had a privilege of being able to work and be involved and watch downtown LA's transformation into this vibrant urban center I know we're going to speak more about here today.
That's terrific. Tell our audience about CCA and the work that it does.
Sure. So CCA, the Central City Association, our mission is through advocacy, influence, and engagement to enhance downtown LA's vibrancy and increase investment in the region. CCA is the region's thought leader on extremely important issues that impact urban lands. We lead, convene, and collaborate with businesses, government, elected officials, residents, educational institutions, nonprofits, and many others to form strong partnerships. We tackle relevant policy issues and build coalitions around housing, homelessness, mobility, economic development, and livability for downtown LA, and hope that many of those learning lessons and experiments that we really trial in downtown can be replicated in other places across the city and really the nation, given the focus and energy that's been looked at for Los Angeles over the past 2 decades in particular.
Sure. Tell me, how old is CCA as an organization?
CCA is almost a century old. Most people don't know that. We are celebrating our 97th birthday. So we've been around for an extremely long time, tackling these issues. And, I sort of argue that CCA really came into its own when it started to lead the revitalization for downtown under my predecessor, Carol Schatz, who should always be recognized for the great work that she did and really growing and expanding CCA's influence.
Sure. And, obviously she's a legend. And so it's really fascinating that CCA is coming on 100 years. But obviously our focus for this conversation is really looking at this dynamic change that has happened over the last 2 decades. So from your estimation, you've been involved in downtown from a policy standpoint, from a bid standpoint, now as leader of the CCA organization. What's changed over the last 20 years in terms of downtown, and how has downtown, quote unquote, finally caught on?
Sure. Well, I think when you look back to, the 1999 and the passage of the adaptive reuse ordinance, that was the first critical piece of policy that passed that really led for the transformation of old historic bank buildings into really cool and trendy housing units. And that happening in conjunction with the development of Staples Center, which really anchored downtown with this key investment in infrastructure and sports, and led to the creation of icons like the Walt Disney Concert Hall and the Broad Museum. At that time, the creation of the business improvement districts also happened, and the ramping up of advocacy efforts to challenge this old idea that the city's future's growth and investment is to be just concentrated in the suburbs. I think all of those things happening around the same time, and the leadership and foresight of the business community in downtown really was what catalyzed this resurgence in the city's urban core, which at that point had just been, an 8 to 5 office park, people getting out as soon as they can, driving home. Now we see it fully as a 24/7 community that's just continuing to grow and expand.
Sure, and you referenced the adaptive reuse ordinance adopted by the city. Can you speak to the role of public policy in addition to adaptive reuse that were drivers for downtown's economic revitalization?
Sure. So the adaptive reuse ordinance was a policy that was developed and conceived. Tom Gilmore, Carol Schatz, CCA, others really were prolific in their developing this and getting it passed at City Hall as really a pilot experiment in downtown that exploded and was able to be expanded. It essentially, as I mentioned, allowed for commercial buildings to be converted into residential units, which led to this influx of residents being able to move to downtown. And this created increased demand for retail, entertainment, restaurants, the cultural centers that we've seen come up and have such success. And I think for many, being able to have that, the population went from, less than 27,000 residents back in 1999 to well over 85,000 residents. And we are expecting this to increase by 125,000 residents by the year 2040. And I think a lot of us feel like at CCA and within our membership, the more that we can do to create this innovative type of policy that incentivizes the kind of development that we want to see will lead to the downtown area playing a significant role in helping build, the over 1 million units that we know we're short within our region. So public policy is critical, and I think that's one of the leading characteristics of CCA and the work that we're able to do productively, both with our members and bringing in key folks from the city to look at these things and experiment, trial, see what works, and then replicate them as they make sense through the rest of the city.
Sure, and certainly with the success of this, the adaptive reuse ordinance and the increased residential base, I note that about 90% or so of downtown's residents are renters. And as communities look to mature and stabilize, there's always a desire to get more homeowners in. And I think, as I said, downtown has about 90% renters compared to 63% in the city and 54% in the county. What are some of the consequences of this? And, what is CCA working on to try to encourage more homeownership in downtown Los Angeles?
Our main priority is to make sure that downtown LA is a neighborhood for all, and that people of all backgrounds, socioeconomic, can live and afford to have and own a home in downtown LA. We know how important it is to advocate for diverse types of housing to accommodate Angelenos at all stages of life, and the importance of having long-term residents to keep downtown LA a sustainable community is extremely important. And I think there's a lot that goes into apartments versus condos, and we work with our members through various policy ideas, both at the city and really the state level, that go into financing and whatnot. We're also been extremely active on the community plan update known as DTLA 2040. that is really the roadmap and the blueprint for what and how can be built in different neighborhoods of downtown. We're extremely excited to move that forward and know how important it is to have housing and diverse housing options throughout downtown. One of our big efforts, you may have seen, was to push forward micro units through a white paper that we've been working on with our members, and it's gotten a lot of positive traction at City Hall, and that will allow for smaller units to be developed on smaller plots of land, again, offering folks different types of housing options, both, in the rental and condo market long term.
Interesting. Tell us more about that. Who is that aimed at? Who's the audience for that?
For I think most people who have followed the story of downtown understand that most of the building has actually been taking, vacant large parking lots and building new high-rise housing on it, which has been great and has really allowed for increased units throughout downtown LA. What we're left with now is, smaller plots of land that are tighter, they just have more constraints. And one of the things that we wanted to do is, you're seeing a lot of the same types of housing being built for financial reasons, and the financing really lends itself to that. But when you look at cities like Seattle and other urban areas where they've been able to really build smaller units, I'm talking like in the 350 square foot range. Micro units are not for everyone, but they are for people who have a specific lifestyle. Take, for instance, a college graduate or someone who's doing their medical residency who don't really want to spend a ton of time in their apartment. They want to use the city and the neighborhood as the amenities. You can look at seniors who don't want a lot of space, but they want to be able to connect with people. We now believe downtown has those amenities, the transit options, the cultural institutions, the restaurants to support that kind of lifestyle, and believe it just adds another type of housing in a much needed market. Oftentimes we see the larger 3 bedrooms, three roommates move in, and that's taken off the market from potentially a family who would be better suited to use that type of 3 bedroom housing. So we believe this opens up a new typology and a new option for people. Again, it's all about diversifying the options that are available to folks. So we're able to have a neighborhood that has all types of people able to live and find a housing option that works for them.
Yeah, you just touched on something that I was going to ask about, which is families. So obviously these micro units are aimed at singles, but I noted that CCA collaborated with Loyola Marymount University a while back and did a survey of residents, and a large percentage of residents polled, I think probably married residents, suggested that they would not recommend the neighborhood as a place to raise children. How is CCA working to make downtown more family friendly, and is this something that is a priority area?
Definitely. This is one of our top advocacy priority areas. And to make sure that downtown can support families, we see people moving in, millennials, seniors, but once they folks get married and they have kids, they may have to reconsider where they're living, because a lot of times there are not, we're seeing not enough early education options for families. To address this, CCA released one of our white papers again on early childhood education facilities in downtown LA. We did this back in May. I encourage everyone who's interested to read more about it. There is a clear need for more schooling options in downtown LA, and this need will only increase as the population continues to grow. So some of the recommendations in that report include locating facilities in existing buildings and encouraging their inclusion in new developments, setting clear, predictable compliance process and flexible land use provisions, and really prioritizing creating schools in new developments and building stronger partnerships with LAUSD, the city, the state, and the broader downtown LA community. I say this as I was one of the board members for the Metro Charter Elementary School, which opened in downtown several years ago. It was doing really well. the California hospital was housing the school, and it had record enrollment, and we could not find a permanent home for the school after 6 years of looking. And most of the policies and requirements are geared at traditional sort of suburban neighborhoods, and looking at urban environments and how we make sure that these schools are safe, but allow for options to exist within high-rise buildings, is something that's going to be absolutely critical for us to create these options for parents, for downtown, in order for it to reach its full potential. We have seen advancements from City Council on this. Councilman Krikorian introduced a motion to streamline permitting of early childhood education facilities and to utilize park space in urban areas like downtown, which was a recommendation of our white paper. And we've also started an education and child care task force to focus on this issue in downtown. It's of the utmost importance that we meet this need and we think outside the box. And similar to what we did with the adaptive reuse ordinance, think about how we can transform buildings and spaces and urban environments to also serve families.
Well, that's terrific. Certainly, no conversation around, Los Angeles these days in many neighborhoods, but certainly specifically downtown, can be had without addressing the issue of homelessness. And certainly, downtown Los Angeles is synonymous with Skid Row, which just borders the east side of downtown. And I know there were a lot of conversations over the years about the excitement of this development happening in the core of downtown and in South Park, but could it expand eastward? And of course, heading eastward, you come right into Skid Row. So can you speak to some of CCA's efforts as it relates to working with the city in addressing the homelessness issue in downtown? And what are some of your policy goals that you're aiming for?
Sure. So homelessness in Skid Row, I believe, is the largest man-made disaster in the country, if by far. It is incredibly horrifying what takes place. And I think we should all be clear that CCA looks at this through a moral lens, through a humanitarian lens of helping serve people, our most vulnerable population. And by far, addressing this problem has been one of the top issues for all of us. I think as a city, we constantly see suffering, and Skid Row is ground zero. And I think a lot of times it's easy to, out of sight, out of mind, unless you're down there in that area, that neighborhood specifically, you don't really know just how bad it is. But the reason this should be important to everybody, if not just for the sheer scale and suffering, it's really because so goes Skid Row, so goes the rest of the city. And what we see, growing and manifesting in other parts of under the freeways and every neighborhood, it starts in Skid Row in terms of the failed policies of containment, trying to consolidate all services into one area, not allowing for other types of housing and buildings and typologies to be constructed. So we've been at CCA addressing this from all prisms, if you will, points on the prisms, is first supporting all types of housing, market rate, affordable, permanent, interim, the bridge home sites that the mayor's been supportive and trying to create in downtown and throughout the city. We've been very aggressive as a business organization, standing up and encouraging folks and property owners to let these projects be built near their building to prevent it all from being consolidated in one area. There's a lot of legal challenges that the city continues to be sued on, a variety of issues that impact how the city is able or not able to address homelessness. The Mitchell case was one of our top advocacy areas, where we fought against redlining and basically treating downtown LA differently and coming up with different sets of rules than the rest of the city. We don't believe that's fair or a policy that is going to solve the problem at hand. We've been convening city and county to develop street-based outreach protocols to manage encampments and to get people housed. We believe the goal should be to move people off into a place where they are safe and can get the help and services that they need to, get back up on their feet. We've been advocating for restructuring of LAHSA to increase accountability.
And Jessica, I'm going to ask you right there quickly to explain to our audience what LAHSA is. So for those non Los Angeles listeners of Civitas LA.
Thank you. That's a great. I'm going to get caught in the alphabet soup just like everybody else does. It's
I'm grateful that we do have folks listening far beyond our friendly confines of Los Angeles. So we certainly want to explain to them what's going on here, and hopefully some of these issues are being dealt with in other areas, and we can all learn from each other as well. So go ahead, please.
Sure. So LAHSA is the Los Angeles Homelessness Services Authority, and that is a joint powers between the county and the city that is geared towards addressing homelessness. So it is the structure, it is the entity that gets the federal grants and the monies to be then implemented across the county, really. So the way that that's structured is the city and the county get appointees, and we believe there's opportunities to embolden that entity to have more accountability, authority, and control over solutions to address those that are experiencing homelessness.
And overall, obviously it's a vexing issue, and we all have to have skin in this game. How do you think this issue will impact the overall trajectory of downtown LA's potential going forward?
Well, there's no question that downtown LA's success depends on it. We need to address the relationship between homelessness, mental health, and criminal justice that leads many to cycle through our public institutions and then return to living on the streets. Um, I think there are a lot of solutions and ideas. Money is not the issue here. It's really about continuing to connect these dots and to be bold and to address them head on, because it's not just downtown success, it's really the city's success. And, we are poised to bring the World Cup, the Olympics, Super Bowls all here. And we should think about our conscience as a city and the fact that we are going to be judged not by how pretty our stadiums are or how great our weather is, but by what people see and experience about how we treat and our fellow Angelenos. So I think this is of the utmost importance. I think the COVID crisis has exacerbated the problem, but COVID has also shown us what we can do when we put our mind to it, which is come up with a triage, really, emergency response. And I'd like to see that those learning lessons and what we've been able to do with testing and setting up makeshift hospitals applied to helping address our homeless crisis that we have faced and are continuing to face with greater stakes.
Share with us a couple of the, obviously it's a challenging issue, but as I said, overall, downtown has really been on a very positive trajectory over a number of decades now. Share with our audience some of the key successes for CCA in downtown over the recent last few years.
Absolutely. Well, downtown LA, as everyone knows, has been, facing such an amazing transformation. Just as a little anecdote, I was a student at USC, and when I was there, you would not have ever gone out downtown. When your parents came to visit, they would stay on the west side. We'd get buses to transport us out, during on the weekends and whatnot. And, a few years ago, I got married, and we got married in downtown, my husband and I. And I remember having friends who were coming back to LA for the first time, or, family members visiting, and they're like, "You're getting married downtown. Like, is it safe to bring our kids? Where should we stay?" And they just
Wow.
came back, and yeah, it was such a beautiful thing to like experience re-showing downtown and put to people we love in our family and network, seeing the revitalization of Grand Central Market, or just going to the arts district and all the cool bars and restaurants and buildings that exist, all the housing units. I mean, we have some of the most exciting buildings that have been built. We have the Walt Disney Concert Hall, the Broad Museum, the Grand Avenue project is underway. Staples Center, LA Live, really reinvigorated. South Park. We have some of the coolest boutique hotels, the Nomad, the Freehand, the Proper. I mean, such great, exciting places to go that if you were to go to another city, any one of those places alone would be, cool and interesting enough. And we're very fortunate to have it all in our, backyard. And not to mention the massive investments that have been made in the transit lines, the bike lanes, the stadiums, the LAFC, the Lucas Museum that's coming at Expo Park, and really being able to connect these communities. And we have the river project that is underway and the Sixth Street Bridge. There's still more to come. And I think when you really think about all that has happened in such a short amount of time, it's really, really gives me chills. And I think we're, all eyes are on downtown LA. And I think it's downtown LA is the heart of our global city. And there's much to celebrate, and there's still much work left to be done.
Well, certainly, there were a number of intrepid locals some years ago who took the first steps and to reimagine what downtown would look like. And then there was capital from the East Coast and other parts of the country that came into downtown. And of course, over these recent few years, we've seen a lot of foreign eyes on downtown, particularly foreign capital coming in from China, building significant projects in downtown. I note that a number of these have stalled. What do you think the impact going forward will be for foreign investment in downtown Los Angeles?
Right. I mean, that's a great question. Los Angeles, is a global city, and foreign investment in LA isn't a recent phenomenon, and it's really deeply connected to the city's economic success and culture. We are fortunate to have the ports of LA and Long Beach, the busiest ports in the United States. LAX, which is undergoing, as everyone knows, a massive renovation that makes key connections with the rest of the globe and been anchors for our economy in decades. We've making major investments in critical infrastructure in our transit system, like commitments with Measure M, and all of which are going to ensure quality jobs for years to come. Our climate is the envy of the world. And I think when you put all of these abundant opportunities that our city has inherent in inherent in who we are, it will no doubt continue to make LA a great place for investment. I think projects that have unfortunately stalled for a variety of reasons are obviously a minor bump in the road, but I think we have other visionaries and minds and investors who are looking at those sites potentially with bigger plans than even previously imagined for them. And despite all of this, I think downtown LA will continue to be an attractive place for people to invest. We have key education institutions. Like I said, we have all the infrastructure. I think we're experiencing a bump in the road with some of these projects, but it will not permanently set us back or deter people from continuing to see the opportunities that exist in downtown.
Sure. Well, speaking about bumps in the road, certainly the COVID pandemic has been one big bump in the road for all of us this year. And I'm sure you've seen a lot of articles out there and speculation around the future of cities and the whole notion of density and will people decamp from places like New York City because of the congestion, et cetera. I know in a recent reflection from CCA, you wrote a piece that contended that urban life is here to stay. So share some of your thoughts on this and how downtown evolves in a post-COVID environment.
Sure. Thank you for this question, because I always love talking about this in particular. Urban centers are the places for innovation. They're full of high-paying jobs and support community living. Urban cores generate significant economic output and are historically resilient. Look at downtown, experience so many challenges, yet continue to majorly transform with each challenge that it faces. We had the 1992 riots, the 94 earthquake, 9/11, the 2008 financial crisis, and people thought all of those moments were going to be the death of cities. we are poised to do the same and come back stronger like we have each time before. We've seen incredible innovation to safely bringing people together for entertainment and try to make the best of this time. For example, we have Staples Center, Microsoft Theater, and LA Live have developed new protocols and procedures to help ensure the safety of guests and continue to work with the promoters and managers to create new events that could take place even before large gatherings of fans were once again permitted. We've seen hyper dense cities in Asia. They've all seen lower death rates and have contained the spread better than other places. And people will always seek the kind of social contact that cities provide. Living in a dense area means having neighbors down the hall to leave essential items at the door and the ability to quickly access things like your grocery store, your hospitals. Downtown LA, again, home to some of the nation's best hospitals. We have the California Hospital Medical Center and have Kaiser, OIC, USC, and the UCLA hospitals all nearby. And DTLA in particular has increased hospital bed capacity during this crisis with the Convention Center South Hall transforming into a medical relief center for patients, which has helped provide thousands of meals weekly to seniors. So I
Hmm.
think the things that make urban environments challenging are really what will end up being the reasons that we're able to overcome the COVID crisis more quickly and ultimately put us in a better, safer place than we were before.
So tell me, what are some of the opportunities that you see coming out of this crisis, and how is CCA positioning itself for the future?
Sure. And I think it's really important that we all think about how this crisis, how we can come out better and stronger than we were before. All of these crises that we've experienced this year have shown the vulnerabilities in our economy and our government structure. We at CCA are trying to leverage this moment to strive towards our vision for a livable and dynamic downtown LA. This vision will help restore our economy and then continue to inspire people to invest in downtown's future. We know that each crisis is devastating, but like I said, always has this opportunity. And because of it, I think we are becoming more nimble and proactive than ever. We are collaborating in a way that I think we've never collaborated with before. All of the different groups I think we're seeing are common shared goals. Even though there are things we may disagree on or there may be solutions that we differ on, I think we can all agree on what the problems are and what we want to see more of moving forward. We've partnered with Kaiser to get the facts from doctors to avoid misinformation around COVID. CCA is hosting an innovation and industry series. It's our new webinar series on how different industries affected by COVID are innovating through this and using that as a moment to inspire new ways of thinking. Our members are also thinking creatively about how to design workplaces that accommodate safe distancing for offices and creating tools like fever detection, contact tracing, touchless utilities, and more. And then we are also supporting efforts coming out of the city like the LA Alfresco initiative,
Hmm.
which I think shows our adaptability and willingness to change. And then we will continue to advocate for a mobile downtown where resources are at people's fingertips, where residents can meet all the needs like shopping, working, recreational, and cultural institutions and gatherings, which will continue to create a more equitable and sustainable city, in our view.
And certainly, CCA is a collaboration and a partnership of hundreds of organizations, private sector, nonprofit sector, trade associations, et cetera. How can others learn about your work and become involved in the work of CCA in support of downtown Los Angeles?
Definitely. I encourage, I feel like a lot of times people are like, oh, well, is that an organization that I can be a part of? And I think one thing that we've done over the last several years is downtown has grown and diversified, has really grow and diversify our membership. So I encourage you, if you're listening to this and wanting to be a part of our coalition, to please, reach out. We have a variety of platforms completely open to the public to learn about LA's most pressing issues and matters. Some we've talked about today. We put out white papers, which we develop and disseminate research, and they form our advocacy agenda and catch the eyes of our city government and business leaders. We have obviously a website that you can get recent updates and highlights on our events, which we have many of, even in a virtual world. Most know we have a kind of important election coming up. CCA puts out a voter guide where we really aim to inform people about what's on the ballot, both in the primary and the general election. So continue to stay tuned on that. And Dwayne, you referenced one of our monthly CCA Reflects pieces. These are monthly insights and narratives that we put together to share what our thoughts are around the happenings of downtown through the lens of a relevant matter. We also use this as a platform to educate our residents on important issues. We, for example, did a simple breakdown of the city budget, which was more relevant than ever, as we all know, a few months ago. And there was a lot of confusion and misinformation about that. We also have, as everyone does these days, social media, which you can follow and learn more about, restaurants and retailers that have interesting specials and ways to support them. You can go ahead and follow us on Instagram at CCA and DTLA, and or our Twitter at CCA underscore DTLA. We think having moments and places for people to engage, to bring forth ideas, to hammer out, the sausage making of policy, which everyone talks about, solutions to these huge issues that we've talked about: housing, homelessness, overcoming economic recovery through COVID. There's no lack of work that needs to be done. And in order to come out better, stronger than we were before, we need all great minds coming together and talking through these issues. And I think it's really a reason why this podcast is so important, because it presents civic leaders who are working in these areas and hopefully inspiring more connections through your listenership. So thank you again for having me here today.
Well, Jessica, that's great. And I'm just going to back up just quickly because you mentioned something about the work that you all do to provide information to your members and community, and one of those items being a simplification of the LA budget. So if anybody can simply explain the LA budget, I say kudos to you for sure. Well, we're gonna say a huge shout out to Marie Rumsey, your Vice President of Public Policy, for her ability to decipher the City of Los Angeles budget for all of us. We appreciate that. This has been a great conversation, and we're really excited to learn about the work that you do and your leadership of CCA. And certainly, we all look forward to the ongoing progress being made in downtown Los Angeles. I remember some years ago, either there was CCA or the Downtown Business Improvement District had a slogan, which may or may not exist today, and it was called Downtown Los Angeles, the center of it all. Now, as a New Yorker, we used to say New York is the center of it all, but the center of the universe. So, is downtown Los Angeles truly the center of it all here?
Oh, I believe so, all the way. That slogan will never go out of relevance in my mind. It is still and will continue to be. And it's the heart of the city, and more people are being housed downtown. More jobs are being created downtown. With the transit that's being built, it all connects in downtown. It's the cultural capital of the world, the restaurant capital, and there's still more to come. So stay tuned. And I think it's a place we want everyone to feel welcome, to feel like they can live, feel like they can work, and really exercise the lifestyle that they have in mind for themselves.
Well, that's great. And, I really appreciate you calling in today and, this has been just a great opportunity and a great learning for us, and hopefully for those who tune in and listen to us. And what we aspire to is to be able to take our podcasts on the road and to be able to really do interviews also on location. And we'd love to come downtown when we can all do this safely and interview some of these new residents who are building community in downtown. I think that would be so important to hear their perspective on what's been evolving over these last number of years. So that's terrific. Jessica, before we leave, we always like to end with just a quick lightning round of questions so that our guests will get to know a little about you and your Los Angeles. Or in this case, since you're such a strong proponent and advocate of downtown Los Angeles, perhaps our listeners could get to know a sense of your downtown Los Angeles. So as we wind down, a few lightning round questions, if you don't mind.
I do not mind, although I'm sure you're going to make my life very difficult right now by picking one.
Okay. Where are you from originally?
Houston, Texas.
I did not know that. Which neighborhood do you currently live in, or do you care to share?
Mar Vista.
Mobility, you mentioned that a lot in your comments. Uber, Lyft, yellow cab, bike, bus, walk, metro, scooter.
I'd say I'm a metro girl.
Okay. Favorite LA restaurant or favorite downtown LA restaurant or two?
Bavel and Dama.
Favorite spot to take a visitor to Los Angeles or favorite spot in downtown Los Angeles to take a visitor?
I'd say the Arts District as a whole.
Okay. Los Angeles Lakers or Los Angeles Clippers?
Clippers.
Rams Chargers?
Rams.
Dodgers Angels?
Dodgers.
Favorite park in Los Angeles or downtown Los Angeles?
Grant Park.
Okay, I know the answer to this one. Bruins or Trojans?
Fight on, baby. Trojans all the way.
Okay, got you. Well, Jessica, this is great. We really, are so pleased to have had you on this afternoon. The dialogue's been great. What CCA is doing has been great, and clearly, downtown's evolution is fully in progress. And we look forward to having you back on again to discuss the work that you're doing and the work that CCA is doing, and really seeing the progress that's being made in downtown post-COVID. So thank you for being with us this afternoon.
Thank you, Dwayne, for the opportunity to share more about the work that we're doing and to remind everyone how incredible a place of downtown is, and for convening, folks around the city to talk about these issues. It's really awesome, inspiring, and important. So thank you, my friend.
Okay, well, thank you for calling in this afternoon. And to our audience, thank you for tuning in once again. We hope you enjoyed this program, and we hope you join us next week as we look forward to another great conversation. Until we meet again, stay strong and get involved. To learn more about Civitas LA and share feedback on this program, or if you have a recommendation about future programs, please visit our website at www.civitasla.com. And we hope you'll connect with us on social media, on Facebook at Civitas LA, Instagram at Civitas_LA, and Twitter at Civitas_LA.